do it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast.
After that, I did a lot of radio, I 18 years of nationally syndicated radio talking about tech. I was the tech guy on iHeart. Then when tech TV kind of started to falter in the early 2000s, this new thing called podcasting came along. And since I was already doing a radio show, I thought, well, it's easy enough to turn it into a podcast. So in about 2005, this is our 20th year, I started a podcast network called Twit. Everything else was, pretty straightforward. We bootstrapped everything. Podcasting's cheap. You can do it with a laptop. And that's why there are literally, I don't know, like 10 million podcasts.
Yeah.
There's millions of podcasts because anyone could start one. But when I started it, it was easier to get people's attention because there were just a handful of them. The downside was you had to have an iPod, a Macintosh. You had to have a way to synchronize. I mean, it was really a painful process.
Back then, too, the premise. Like, I remember, ironically, one of my first guests was somebody that I used to work with circa 2004. And I came in the office one day and he said, "Have you heard about podcasting?" And I said, "No, what's that?" And he said, "Well, you download it in RSS, you sync it to your iPod, whatever." And he finished. And I said, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Don't ever speak to me.
No one's ever going to do that.
Don't ever speak to me about this again. I never want to hear this."
Yeah. So the reason that I did it, it wasn't necessarily because I was like, oh my God, you know what? I should do this. It was not that. It was, I found podcasting and I thought, my goodness, I want to make a podcast myself. I want to learn how to record, how to put this together. What is this podcasting thing? Just do the thing. What am I doing all the time? Oh, I'm teaching yoga classes all the time. I'm just going to record those because I'm already doing it. So I'm not adding anything. So that's why it started. And the idea also dropped in because a lot of my students would say, "I'm going on vacation. I wish I could take you with me." And I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought, And so I thought, okay, well, I recorded the episodes and I did the whole podcasting thing, submitting the RSS. Like, I figured out all the tech part of it on my own as an experiment.
Yeah.
And then I would tell my students when they said, "Hey, I want to take you with me." And I would go, "You can with this podcast thing." And they would look at me like I was nuts.
In 2000, actually, I got a vision for audio online. Don Katz, Audible, had dinner with him, and he presented a vision for audio that just blew my mind. And Audible continues to dominate in a certain space of that today. 2004, podcasting pops up. And what podcasting represented to me at the time was, now I can play Audible. It's actually gotten a lot bigger. It's gotten a lot more exciting. But the idea of someone with a message being able to distribute it without censors, without distribution requirements, without anything, directly to the audience, spam free, was really, really exciting to me. So I started from day one. Did not make money until at least a decade into it, but was there from the beginning. The first podcast event where you and I met. I love to tell everybody that at the end of the podcast event, the entire podcast event met in the hotel bar afterwards. There was a page of podcasts available at the time. Now it's gotten slightly bigger.
The issue now for shows is discovery, and this is the issue for creators in general. There's so many of us. How do you get noticed? How do you get an audience? I was lucky. I came out of tech TV. I dragged that audience kicking and screaming with me to podcasting.
Yeah.
And even then there was only a handful of other podcasts. Now it's tough. I'm not sure I'd start a podcast today unless I were a celebrity. Those are the podcasts that do very well.
Yeah.
So really today, that's still the best way. If you don't have another medium, if you're not the star of a CBS television show, the best way to get your name known is to be on a network that can help you go viral, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. Those things, or Apple's iTunes. If you're featured on the front page of iTunes, you have a shot.
I've watched actual hard data from some of my podcasts and people that I work with independently, that their stats, if you will, the data of consumption for their podcast has drastically diminished, because what I feel has happened is that now when we connect or create stuff online, everybody's dream scenario is to go viral for the majority of the time, where there is value attached to millions and numbers that no longer mean really anything to me. I feel like it's a completely disconnected number.
Yeah.
But I think that if you go into to really serve a small amount of people, to really vision 20,
Mm.
not even 100, 20 people that your content is really reaching, and you can nurture that, you're going to get the bonus of the other stuff.
But I think what's important, if I could throw on the podcast consultant hat a little bit into this, is you need to know what it is that you want your podcast to do. A lot of people don't.
Can you expand on what people should want, their like examples of what a podcast should be doing?
Well, let's give all sorts of examples. I have one client who he just wants the podcast to make the phone ring.
Hmm.
You know, he sells a service. And basically his podcast is a pre-sale process to his existing client base. Now, talk about no art. It's a 25-minute monologue that would bore, anyone who isn't a potential client of this guy. But he gets less than 500 downloads per episode.
Yeah.
And every time somebody calls, one out of every 3 of them, he converts for a $3,000 package. I heard it said recently, might even have been a podcast movement. Podcast is a transaction. You trade value for attention. You give somebody value in exchange for their attention. So he gives them value on this concept in the financial planning world. He spends time explaining it, and they go, yeah, I like this guy. At the end, he goes, if we want to go further and talk about this, call this number.
One of the problems for podcasting right now, especially unless you're in the top 10, the top 10 podcasts get 50% of all ad revenue. I mean, literally 50%. All the long tail, everybody else is, scrambling. And, that's part of the problem is when you're in uncertain times or an uncertain economy, a lot of companies pull back on advertising when in fact, that's the time you should. For the longest time, podcasting relied on B2C, business to consumer advertising. And that if you listen to podcasts, Squarespace and Casper and Audible and Blue Apron, all of those B2C businesses were really good for podcasting and they really kept us afloat, but they have all disappeared. They're either like Squarespace, they said, well, we'd like to spend those millions of dollars on a Super Bowl ad, or like Blue Apron, they just, well, bye-bye.
Yeah.
So right now we're surviving on B2B.
Everybody should ask what role AI plays in their podcast. The joke is, in AI, they say you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by someone who uses AI. The exact same thing can be true for podcasts. Your podcast is not going to be replaced with an AI podcast. It's going to be replaced with a podcast that uses AI to do the stuff that AI should be doing. There are a lot of editors who are afraid of losing their art. There are a lot of by-the-hour editors who are afraid of losing some work. Writers for show notes, this kind of stuff, all these things. There are some who put a great deal of value into it. There are some who have found a great deal of value in it. And AI really, really shakes that up in some ways that people have to discern. What amazes me is we now can click a button and make all the background noise go away. That only can make our podcast better.
Sure.
We can now click a button and get a first draft of our show notes or the salient points of the podcast. I mean, when this thing comes out on YouTube, the chapter marks are going to be done by AI.
Right.
We can click a button and have that first level of stuff happen. And we can do 2 things with that. We can cut our time in half, which many should. Many are spending too much money on their podcast. Or we can go one step further because that first step was done by the computers.
So we do a lot of marketing. And one of the things that's changed now is you can use AI to do clips. Otherwise, it's expensive we used to do it with people. We still have people, but AI will generate clips out of a show. Then the people look at it and pick the right ones, tighten it up and so forth. But they do that. They make it vertical. They put in captions. They do a lot of the stuff that helps it go viral on these platforms, Instagram and TikTok and so forth. So it's a lot. There are tools out there to help.
There's opportunities for us to be in the world and find a use for the podcast versus these other forms of content, which actually require you to be like this. For those of you who are listening, I'm grabbing my phone and I'm putting it right in front of my face at about, 5 inches, 6 inches in front of my face. And the way in which my whole attention is moving into a machine is totally tuning you off the world around you. Whereas when you listen to a podcast, you can't tell. Most people can walk around, look at stuff, go shopping, and they're in the world while experiencing something with them.
It's been a while since I went to a podcasting event, and obviously things have changed. We've been doing podcast things and stuff since 2006 or something crazy at Cashfly. But this is your daily. How have you seen things evolve? Like where are we at in the podcasting life cycle?
We're in a really interesting place because, you get 10 people at Podcast Movement, put them up against the wall and have all 10 of them give their definition of podcasting, and you'll probably get 10 different things. So there's a bit of confusion, but there's a lot more money. And because there's a lot more money, a lot more people are coming in that are adding the confusion. It gets really interesting. And then, of course, you throw in the role of AI in the midst of the money and the confusion, and things get really, really interesting. But at the same time, I'm entering my third decade of this. I've been doing this for 20 years. And we have learned a lot along the way of how to get through the confusion, how to get through the AI, how to deal with the money. And it's an interesting place. So, next year we'll be 21 and we can finally buy a drink. But it's interesting times right now.
What people have told us old school media types is we want genuine, passionate people talking about things they care about in an unadorned, unaffected way. We want authenticity. And so I'd bet on that. It is amazing that you don't need to have $44 billion to start a podcast, to build an audience, to make a living. I think the days of super platinum artists, rock and roll stars might be over.
Yeah.
But that's not a bad thing. It means that there'll be thousands of successful Chapel Roans and people who will come out of nowhere, Shabuzis who will make music that people love and will make a living at it. And they may not be Taylor Swift, but that's okay. I think that's better. I would like to hear more voices, not fewer voices.
This is different, another round, so much more to talk about. Gonna aim to satisfy with help from Cashfly. Get to it fast. Right here on the Anycast. Make it strong, make it last. Right here on the Anycast. The Anycast podcast, brought to you by Cashfly.